One morning, an elephant named Gauri begins a long journey, not through a forest, not with her herd, but inside a massive truck. People gather along the road. Some wave happily, others protest. Wildlife experts ask, should this transfer even be allowed? Forest officials check documents. Animal rights groups rush to court. Suddenly, one elephant becomes the center of a national debate. The question is no longer about Gauri alone. It is about how India balances wildlife conservation with human use of captive animals. And that story begins with the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act 2022. For over 50 years, India's Wildlife Protection Act 1972 has been the backbone of wildlife conservation. It protected endangered species, created national parks and sanctuaries, punished poaching, regulated trade in wildlife. It helped India become one of the world's strongest wildlife conservation nations. But as international agreements evolved and new conservation challenges emerged, the law also needs updating. So, Parliament passed the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act 2022. The amendment introduced several changes. It aligned India's laws with CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. It rationalized wildlife schedules. It strengthened protection for many species. But among all the changes, one amendment captured the nation's attention: captive elephants. Let's understand why. Imagine owning a priceless historical monument. You cannot simply sell it to anyone. There are strict rules. Similarly, elephants are not ordinary property. The Asian elephant is a Schedule 1 species, receiving the highest level of legal protection under Indian wildlife. Yet, unlike most wild animals, some elephants legally remain in captive. For temples, forest departments, rescue centers, or individuals holding valid ownership certificates. For years, transferring captive elephants was tightly regulated. Then came the amendment. The 2022 law created an exception by allowing the transfer or transport of a live captive elephant by a person holding a valid ownership certificate, subject to prior permission and conditions prescribed by the central government. Later, the Captive Elephant Transfer or Transport Rules 2024 laid down procedures and conditions for such transfers. Supporters said this gives genuine owners a legal process. It helps in better care, rehabilitation, and management. It brings clarity to the law. But critics immediately raised another question. Could this open the door to commercial trade disguised as legal transfers? That concern became the heart of the debate. Wildlife organizations argued that elephants are intelligent social animals with deep emotional bonds. Frequent transfers may affect their welfare. Some experts worried that vague expressions like religious or any other purpose could be interpreted too broadly if not implemented carefully. So the issue was not simply about moving elephants, it was about protecting them from exploitation while allowing legitimate management. Now let's move to another important amendment. Suppose a family owns an old ivory carving inherited decades ago. Can they secretly sell it? Can they transfer it without informing authorities? The law says no. The amendment strengthened the regulation of animal articles. An animal article means any object made from a protected wild animal or any part of it, such as ivory carvings, skins, horns, claws, or similar wildlife derived items covered by the Act. Ownership itself is not enough. Such articles remain subject to strict legal regulation, ownership certification where applicable, declaration requirements, and restrictions on transfer and trade. The objective is simple. If wildlife products move freely in the market, illegal poaching becomes much harder to detect. By regulating ownership and transfer, authorities can distinguish legitimate possession from illegal wildlife trade. Think of it like tracking rare diamonds. Every movement must be documented. Otherwise, stolen diamonds become impossible to identify. Wildlife protection works in a similar way. Every legal transfer strengthens traceability. Every undocumented transfer creates an opportunity for illegal trafficking. Now, step back and look at the bigger picture. This amendment is not merely about elephants or ivory. It reflects a much larger challenge faced by every conservation law. How do you protect wildlife without ignoring people who legally possess captive animals? How do you prevent illegal trade without creating unnecessary hardship for genuine owners? How do you balance compassion with conservation? There are no easy answers. That is why the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act 2022 continues to be discussed by lawmakers, conservationists, forest officials, and courts. Some see it as a practical modernization of an old law. Others believe certain provisions require closer scrutiny and careful implementation. Both perspectives share one common goal: protecting India's wildlife. Because once an elephant disappears from the forest or an endangered species is lost forever, no amendment can bring it back. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of this law. Wildlife conservation is not just about saving animals, it is about ensuring that every legal decision made today still leaves room for elephants to walk freely for generations yet to come.